Hi, Christine Garcia from Children's Wellness Center of Colorado. Thank you so much for being here with me today. We have so many questions that we have a workshop that we do, and you're a part of the team. And we get so many questions about how do I tell the kids that this divorce is happening and how to reassure them. And you've always had so many great answers. I wanted to get them on tape. So if you can share with us what you share at the seminars, that would be fantastic.
Yes, absolutely. So I think a lot of people think of the family as breaking up or, kind of having this disconnection, which makes sense because the family is changing. But that's what the kids really need to know, is that the family is changing, because from the kids' perspective, no matter whether the parents stay married or divorced, it's still their family. And so when we present to kids that the family is ending or breaking up, it can really create a lot of unnecessary anxiety, feelings of things not being safe, being unpredictable. What does this mean? And if I don't have a family anymore, then what does that mean for me and my personal safety? Because as human beings, we're designed, and children are designed to look to their caregivers to be that safety and that support and that consistency. So the first thing that I like to suggest to people is to use different language when they approach their children about the changes that are going to be happening in the family. The family is changing. Mom and dad are no longer going to be married, not going to be living together. Things are going to look different, but for all intents and purposes, we're still a family. And the children need to know that their family sees themselves still as a unit. Now, your relationship with your partner changes. Instead of being partners or being a married couple, you're now going to shift into co-parenting roles, where your business partners, and your business is raising your children. And so that also is going to change the dynamics of the family and change the relationships between people. But ultimately, again, from your children's perspective, no matter what happens, this is their family. And so making sure to use a language that supports the idea that you as their parents also still see that this is their family is one important key step. The next thing that I think is really important to keep in mind is that children often find themselves feeling like they're in a loyalty bind between the two parents. And so we really want to do our best as parents to minimize having that become bigger than it needs to be. It's by default going to be something that your children may feel and may respond to, even if you're not actively participating in creating that, or maybe one person in the relationship is doing that more than the other, in terms of creating a climate in which your children feel they have to choose between both parents. So making sure that also, as you're talking to your children about the changes that are going to happen within the family, that they are given permission to love and continue to have positive relationships with both parents.
Yeah, that's great. I feel like one of the things that the loyalty bind really refers to also is just having a separate identity at each house. And I know that, each home can have a different tone, but do you feel like there's things to work on to help ensure that child feels like the same person, the same authentic person at each place? Is that something to work on with people, or how would you suggest people to help with that one?
Yeah, whenever possible, it's really important that the parents as co-parents come up with some basic shared maybe goals, or have some identified shared values if possible, as it pertains to the children. So of course, most parents, whether they're married or not married, want their children to grow up to be well-adjusted, productive, loving, caring adults, and you can add a lot of different adjectives to that, but really starting with identifying what is your goal as co-parents, now that your roles have shifted, and what do you both find some common ground on that you want for your children. And then from there, trying to decide what is the environment, or what are going to be the expectations in both homes that are going to help your children reach those goals, or help you as parents reach the goal of having well-adjusted children. When all of these things can be more difficult when partners are not aligned, or where there's a lot of really strong or intense feelings, anger, or feelings of betrayal or resentment, that really get in the way of parents being able to collaborate and work together on these issues. But in an ideal situation, and a way to minimize the impact on the children, is really to identify what's going to be important components of each household, so that while there will be a different tone or a different feel or a different way that parents may navigate teaching their children those things, there's a shared purpose and a shared goal that hopefully will underline every interaction that the child, receives from the parents. And that's really going to give children the best opportunity to, or minimize the differences that they feel between the households.
This kind of leads me to the next question, though, is how do you present to your kids when you're not okay with the divorce? It is really painful, and how can you put on this united front that, hey, the family's kind of staying the same, or, we're changing, but we're still a family, when you're just devastated and you can't even believe this is happening. Give me some tips on that. Yeah.
Yeah, that is so hard. I mean, it's the same as, what we might experience when we're feeling really strong things as adults and as parents. How do we help our children, during those times? And I think a lot about other big news that we sometimes have to give our children, that may or may not have happened already in your life, but people have to share, news of deaths within the family, or moves that are going to be happening because of whatever reasons. For some families, they experience a lot of hardship or hard times where there's significant changes to their lifestyle. So this is another one of those. It's a big deal thing to share, and there's going to be a lot of feelings that people feel adults are experiencing when they're trying to do their best. And I always assume that people are trying to do their best when they're trying to help their children through this. And so really kind of first doing an inventory and a check-in of where you are at with your own feelings around what's happening. And can you get yourself to a place where you can shift your perspective enough so that when you share the information with the children, it doesn't mean that you're not going to show up with a blank face or not show any emotion, or be able to express that you feel sadness or disappointment that this is happening if that's how you feel. But what we want to avoid is stepping over the line of seeing that, putting that responsibility on our children to somehow fix it or change it, or really shifting all of the blame onto one partner or one of the parents, because ultimately what that does for children is really, again, accentuate that loyalty bind and put them in the position of, oh, in order to have a connection with dad, I have to hate mom, or in order to have a connection with mom, I have to hate dad. And there is nothing good that comes of that for children or for parents. It tends to make things much, much worse. So if you as a parent aren't able to find some way to get to a place that you can deliver this news to your children as a united front with your partner, in which at least you can say, this isn't something that I want to have happened. We didn't get married with the expectation that we would be getting divorced. But instead there's there's things that have changed or shifted, or feelings that have changed. And at this point in time, we are going to be, separating or divorcing, and things may look different. We don't know exactly what that's going to look like yet. Here's what we do know. If you can't have that kind of conversation with your kids without going down a path of saying, and this is all your dad's fault, or this is all your mom's fault, then that would be a time for you to recognize that you need to do some of your own work around processing some of those feelings, whether it's with a friend or a mental health professional, or someone who can really help you digest your feelings and get to a place where you can present it in a way that doesn't give your children extra burden.
I guess the last thing that I was going to ask you that kind of relates to that is, when do you think it's important, or what kind of warning signs would you see that you might need to get some extra help or some outside support, whether for your kids, especially the adolescents, or what kind of behaviors maybe should we be looking for to get help? And then maybe you can tell us how to reach out to your firm, because you have a whole team of professionals that can help in this situation.
One sign that I hear when people start noticing their kids lying. And so oftentimes when I ask more about what that means or what that looks like, they identify that the child's telling one parent one thing and telling another parent another thing. To me, that's a clear indicator of that loyalty bind. They are trying to find a way to navigate the situation between the two adults, who they're just wanting to have connection and relationship with the adults, their parents. And so that can be one sign that, hey, maybe we're not doing as good of a job of keeping our kids out of being burdened by these feelings that we're having. For example, if we're noticing that there's inconsistencies and they're telling us different things, that's not always the case. Of course, there's situations even with married parents that they have kids saying different things for their own motivation to get what they want, to be able to go out and spend time with friends or things like that. But really, it's, oftentimes it starts to become a consistent behavior, and it starts to, it typically is about the other parent, where they're really kind of doing a reporting on, oh, so, dad did this and mom did that. And even without intending to, sometimes unintentionally, parents are looking for that kind of update or report on the other parent. And they don't realize that the children are picking up on these signs and behaviors, that they want that information. So that can be, something that can be an indicator. Starting any large behavioral shifts, it's kind of the same advice that we give parents about, like, how do you know if your kid's struggling with depression or, potentially thinking about suicide? There's typically shifts in behavior, changes in the way they're performing at school. Maybe they're a kid that used to be really connected and outgoing, and now they're shutting down and withdrawing. Anything that, you're kind of noticing, like, wow, like, my child's really showing that they're internally not doing okay. And behavior is always a communicator of internal distress. So behaviors are one of the best ways. And it's not just behaviors that are big and, angry outbursts and temper tantrums and things like that. It's also noticing when a child's shutting down, withdrawing, not engaging as much in the things they enjoy, not connecting with friends, not connecting with you. Things like that. So those would be some signs. Of course, on the more significant end of the spectrum, in terms of, what could happen, we have, children that start to struggle with manifesting, especially as they get older, more quote unquote scary or concerning behaviors, such as using drugs or alcohol, or if they've, started to use some of that a little bit, increasing their use. Self-harm, suicidal thoughts, or suicidal reports of feeling suicidal, getting in fights at school, starting to get legal charges, things like that. Those are all indicators that there's something internally that's not feeling quite right for a kid.
Oh, that's such good information. Well, thank you. I appreciate your time. Can you tell us how we could get a hold of you and the professionals there on your team? And then we'll probably wrap up.
Yeah. So at Children's Wellness Center, we serve children, adolescents, and their parents and caregivers, as well as young adults and families. Something we didn't get a chance to talk about today is just how to support adult children through divorce as well. So anytime that extra support is needed, we'd love to be a resource for you and for your family. So you can contact Children's Wellness Center of Colorado, info@cwccolorado.com, 720-662-7862, extension 0. We'll get you to our office manager, who will do an initial screening, make sure we're a good fit, things like that for your family as best as we can at that stage. And then from there, connect you to a therapist, and every person in the family can have their own individual therapist for support if needed. And or we also provide therapy for parents who are trying to figure out their co-parenting relationship, as well as family therapy for the whole family. We've had some families that really want to approach this as a family and continue to support each other through the process, even though they are divorcing. So that also can be kind of a preventative measure or an early intervention before things do escalate further.
That sounds fantastic, and just such good advice. And it's so good to people like you out there that are able to support these families, because there are a lot of people that are very proactive. They don't want to damage their kids. They really are trying and just need the resources. So I appreciate what you guys do.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.